Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live Workshop Play Show, and welcome to this great weekend in the beautiful state of Florida, housed in the beautiful country of America. We are truly the greatest state to live, work, shop, and play in, and the model state to the rest of the world, how to live successfully. One of the big questions that we see and hear so much, just Florida has so many aging seniors and aging population moving into it. How do you guys move around so good, and how do you guys move around and generate and get around so well? A lot of it, you can attribute to weather. A lot of it you can attribute to living healthier earlier on in your life. But there is a certain group, and I'm in that group, where we've had a rough life. We've done a lot of things to our life. We've done a lot of exposure. I've done a lot of sports. I've done a lot of things moving around. And, I've got these beautiful little pinkies that look like they're decrepit. And, so living in a warm state like this, I went to a cold state not too long ago, and living in a warm state like this, you really appreciate when you go to those cold states, Florida, being warm and beautiful and not having that cold. But my joints were aching like I couldn't believe. And I've got a guest on with me today. I'm very excited to have him on because there is hope. You don't have to stay nestled up in a warm state like Phoenix, Arizona, or Florida. You don't have to stay in there. You can actually travel and get around. It is a beautiful method that's coming out that a lot of people are speaking about. And I want to introduce my guest today and go right into the subject. Dr. Richie Striano. Dr. Rich, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Now, you focus on stem cell orthopedics. When I hear that word and I hear stem cell, I go, oh my God, what is that? Where is it going? There was so much controversy about the word stem cell 20 years ago, how bad it was, how we were going to recreate life, we were going to redo that. Now there are people raving on stem cell about treatments that give them a second opportunity in life. I'm a young guy. I'm 55. I'm considered young. I think I'm getting old. I'm starting to move around. I had my first impactful injury that was impacted by age probably 10 years ago. I fell and I hurt this pinky finger right here, And I went to the doctor and I looked at the doctor and I said, hey, what's going on? My finger, it hurts. He looked at me and he said, you've got arthritis. And I said, how do I have arthritis? I'm 45 years old. He said, well, you've injured it. And that causes inflammation and it's causing the joint. And he explained this stuff. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to go with I'm not old and I'm not having these problems. Now, run the plate 10 years ahead. I now went to Germany. It was cold just a few weeks ago. I noticed my knees were hurting, my lower back was hurting, and my fingers were hurting like you won't believe. The cold was impacting. I went back to the doctor and I said, I got to have you do something. He said, there's nothing you can do. He said, it's just part of life. The arthritis is going to happen. It's because you're getting old. I said, again, I'm not going to accept that I'm getting old and I can't do things. He talked to me a little bit and mentioned the word stem cell. There's where you come in. What does stem cell, how has it changed from 20 years ago to today, and it's becoming such a used method to deal with these issues?
So first of all, movement is life. If you can't move, you can't live. So my mission is getting people moving, restoring the function of joints, less pain, better quality of life. And so the first thing is stem cells became the Wild West in the USA. And many of these treatments were ineffective or delivered wrong. So the best thing to understand is what is a stem cell and what can it do? So a stem cell is smart. It's a smart cell. And when it's delivered into a specific area, it is able to differentiate into the tissue that it's in, cartilage, ligament, tendon, bone, fat, muscle. And so the approach is to look at every single thing that contributes to the joint's function. That includes muscles, ligaments, tendons, everything. That's the approach I take. It's a whole joint approach. And now in clinical journals, they're saying that arthritis is not just a disease of the cartilage, it's affecting the whole joint. Well, I've known that for 18 years. I'm glad they woke up. And so the first thing is mapping. So I am certified in diagnostic ultrasound imaging. I've done over 40,000 cases. I trained at the Mayo Clinic and Andrews Orthopedic Institute. And so the benefit is at the time of a visit, I can actually look at the fine details in every structure that contributes to whatever joint I'm looking at. And then based on that, I can make the map of each of the targets that need to be treated with the stem cells. The most important thing to understand is there's two types of stem cells. One that comes from umbilical cord, which are not your stem cells. There's a percentage where DNA can be transferred, COVID, spike protein, other contaminants. The stem cells that I develop come from you. Millions of your own powerful stem cells. Nobody else's garbage. You get the same garbage you've got, and we put it back. Once this is mapped out, then and all the targets are delineated, what's important to understand is that with high definition ultrasound imaging, each of these tissues is made up of threads. And I can see a broken thread as small as a half a millimeter or a large tear. So I basically do a private investigation. I find a culprit, and then I follow it wherever it leads, as well as the fact that the patient is looking at this live on the screen. And so they get an education. I'm a teacher, so I can't help it. They get an education in ultrasound imaging. Once that's done, then the fat is drawn from one of the love handles. And fat I call a reef. So if you think of a coral reef, there's the shiniest fish, a purple tang, a clown trigger, and that's what everyone looks at. But the entire reef contributes to why those fish are vibrant. It's a biological ecosystem. The coral, the bacteria, the other fish, everybody lives in a full community. And the benefit of fat is that the entire coral reef is intact and just came from you minutes, maybe 2 hours before we're going to start to do the treatment. So once the stem cells are calculated, how many need to go everywhere, then the injections are guided by the ultrasound imaging, which can see the damage and deliver the needle within a half a millimeter.
Now, give me an example, Doc, of where, when you say damage or the issue, let's go to a point. Give me an example of where you would do something like this, what a person's dealing with on a daily basis that they could come to you and have addressed.
The most prevalent complaint is the knee joint. So stem cells regenerate cartilage, fibrocartilage, as well as all of the other structures around the knee. Typically, an orthopedist would do a single shot on the side of the knee. After ultrasound examinations, you can inject the crack in a meniscus, the cruciate ligaments, ACL, PCL. You can treat the interior of the joint. And what people need to understand is there's a capsule around every joint that protects it. So the interior of the joint can be crying for help, sound the alarm, but stem cells can't get in. The membrane shuts the door. So what happens now is the membrane becomes inflamed. Inflammation starts almost everything. And from that inflamed membrane, these really bad guys are dumped into the joint called cytokines. And they're like termites. They eat away at the cartilage. So over time, it gets worse and worse. Stem cells are hugely anti-inflammatory. So like the old Pac-Man game, if you can remember, they eat the cytokines.
Right.
They stimulate the cartilage to regenerate. They can differentiate into cartilage. They can differentiate into the fibrocartilage of the meniscus. They can differentiate into a tendon. And as well as differentiation, they stimulate those structures. So everything in those structures has a network called an extracellular matrix. It's a network of other components in those tissues. And what is amazing is something called crosstalk. When the stem cells are injected, they communicate with the extracellular matrix, and the matrix communicates back to the stem cells, basically saying, I need some more energy over here. Can you stimulate the mitochondria? Or, my tendon is in trouble. Can you send me tendon cells? It's mind-boggling, the crosstalk. You could do 10 shows on that alone.
So, Doc, me being, breaking it down to where I can understand it a little more, the knee pain, what causes that? As we get older, why do we start struggling in our fingers, our knees? Why did that doctor tell me, hey, that injury, because you're not 25, is not going to heal like it did when you were 25? You're now, just like my pinky finger, I've fallen many times. I fell down. Now all of a sudden it's disformed. It hurts to move, and he's saying it's bone on bone, and I can snap it. I can try to straighten it, and it pops. Why does that occur as we grow older?
Because as time goes on, whether it's trauma or accumulation of these inflammatory substances, it starts with inflammation. That's the first domino that falls. And then it goes off into different exits. If you think of it as a highway, the stem cells are traveling down the highway, and they can go off into a knee joint. The problem is that all of these joints are protected by a membrane. And so that's why they don't repair themselves, and they progress over time. So whatever you've got, it's going to get worse. Everybody is going to develop, from wear and tear and age, changes in the structural components of the joint. Thank God the approach I take can restore those. So this happens in 3 ways. I just explained about the adipose tissue and the injections. The second layer is a laser that was developed by the MD for 2 years, who was the head of laser development and research at NASA. And he created this mind-boggling laser that stimulates regeneration and is anti-inflammatory, promotes oxygen, which is the key of life. And so the laser is used. It's non-invasive, extremely powerful after the treatment, because it enhances the function of the stem cells by up to 54%. And then the last stage is a way to manipulate hyperbaric chamber therapy from a famous Dr. Arthritis in Israel. And so those are the 3 layers. All 3 boost your immune system, because immune has a role with every inflammatory process. The second part is they boost the function of the stem cells. So each layer that I have developed and the way it's administered is enhancing the layer before it. So it's a multi-layered stem cell and technology protocol that is working very well.
Now, why 20, I remember 20 years ago when I was looking at my uncles, and I was over, great Italian family. I'd see my uncles there. They'd be spitting in a platoon, and they'd have a tennis ball by them. And I'm going, why do you have a tennis ball? And they go, my damn hands are arthritic. And, so they do that. I sit here and I try to squeeze something like that. Or if I've got a knee plane, I'm going in thinking I got to go in the gym and work it out. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. And squeezing that ball. How did we go from squeezing a ball to finding out that doesn't work? Explain to me that process, because in my mind, I didn't use my hands enough. But then when I go to a doctor, they're going, no, you've overused them.
Well, squeezing a ball is not bad when you want to look at your grip strength. But by the way, there's even studies on grip strength, how it contributes to longevity. But I just wanted to add something. The protocol that I've developed now is that not only do we get the entire coral reef of stem cells to put into the joint, but I'm now also adding those same stem cells intravenously, which shuts down systemic inflammation. The way you get there is basically an injury, an inflammatory process, and then the joint degrades over time. Stem cells can't get in. So in your pinky, you'd be looking at a ligament or a tendon. I've done everything from literally the base of the skull to fingertips, shoulders, elbows, knees, ankles, you name it, the entire spine. So all of these joints develop an issue, whatever it is. Call it an arthropathy in big terms. But you can untangle that mess by looking at all of the different components. Your pinky, your doctor says you have arthritis. Okay, but what do I do about it?
Yeah.
So you're what I call a tweener. You're in between having a diagnosis of arthritis and what's going to happen someday. Surgery, they pin the joint together. What do you do in between that? These doctors are not offering the latest and greatest in clinical research, which is stem cells. There's hundreds of studies on clinic.gov. So it's not like this doesn't exist. It's just that medical doctors, most, they don't have critical thinking. They're not curious. So they learn something which doesn't include regenerative medicine, and that's what their focus is. And I completely understand that. There's a whole nother community that looks at not treating the smoke, but going down to the fire, the baseline where all of this crap started, and then untangling it, just like I would do your hand, by looking at it under the high definition ultrasound imaging, so I could see exactly what's happening. And the benefit is you see it live on the screen. You don't have to wait like you go to a radiology center, they do an MRI, the guy doing it is a tech, he doesn't know anything about you. A doctor reads it who also doesn't know anything about you and sends it to another doctor who reads the report to you, and you have no idea what the heck he's talking about. That's a view from up on high, an MRI. Ultrasound can zoom in and tell you what brand of coffee you're having. Wow. That's the difference.
Now, when I went and had, I've had it in both my hands, and this is something I want to say. I went to a doctor. The doctor turned around and said, we need to give you a cortisone shot. It'll help your fingers and it'll ease the pain. It did. I'll give it credit. It did for a couple of months. It was fine. I really want to warn people about this in the cortisone shots. And they gave me a shot here in my hand, and it did help. But somehow it caused the pinky, the ligament, to weaken. I went to the gym. I felt so strong. I was working out, doing chin-ups, and all of a sudden I heard a pop. And I went, what was that? It was the weirdest thing. I looked down, and my finger was pointing straight up. And I couldn't move it down. I couldn't do it. And I said, oh, my God, what happened to my finger? I said, what happened? I rushed back to the doctor, turned around and looked at it. They said, you've popped a ligament. I said, what do you mean pop a ligament? They said, well, when you got the cortisone shot, it weakened the ligament. You went in, you worked out, and it popped it. And I said, what do I do now? 9 surgeries later, 9 surgeries, tendon graft out of the arm, put up in the hand, scar tissue immediately happening. Couldn't move my finger. My finger stuck like this. Didn't bother me much. All I walked around, I drank with a nice little pinky out. But when I'd go dip and get foods, my pinky would go in the food. They said, you got one option. You can have this surgery and you can keep doing this, but your finger's never going to be the same. You only got one other option. I said, what is that? They said, you can fuse your finger and it'll stay in a hook. I said, there's no way I want to do that. I can see when I go to shake a hand or do something, my finger's in a hook. I worked with the great Trace Atkins, who cut his finger off completely. People don't know this. When you look at him and he's playing the guitar, they fused his finger to hold that guitar and be able to pick. So all he does is he goes back and forth with the finger to the guitar. So I don't want to fuse a finger. I don't want to do something like that. I don't want to live in this pain. I'm scared to death of cortisone shots now because I don't want 9 more surgeries to happen. So the stem cell, they're saying, is the up and coming thing. When you see something like this happen, somebody like me come to you, what can I expect from getting the treatment and the surgery? Because right now, all I can do is I squeeze and I'm in so much pain. It's, you know what, it's equivalent to a cavity in a tooth. What can I expect?
Let me explain what happens. Number one, we're talking about inflammation. And so cortisone is an anti-inflammatory drug. But what's very interesting about this is you're getting an injection to get rid of the pain because there's arthritis, and yet cortisone contributes to enhancing arthritis. It damages the cartilage over time. You can get a cortisone injection once in a while, but it reduces the inflammation. So that goes back to the membrane, the inflammatory cytokines that are in the joint. And what do you do to shut them down? In your pinky, you have ligaments that surround a tendon, and you have tendons that go through these hoops called pulleys, like putting a string through the eyes of a fishing rod. And it is anti-fibrotic. When I worked with Dr. Tremolata in Costa Rica, where I was for several years, we treated scars with stem cells, cosmetic scars, but I can see the scar tissue from 9 surgeries that is stiff, right? A scar is stiff, it doesn't stretch. So wherever the scar tissue is, you lose the mechanical characteristic or elasticity of that tendon. And so stem cells being anti-fibrotic, I can see the scar tissue and inject it. The scar does not become a tendon, but instead of it being a wire, so it's stiff, it becomes a rubber band. So it restores elasticity or stretch to the structure that's frozen by scar tissue. But it doesn't become a tendon. But that's why you get movement. And that's why your finger could be bendable again. Pinning it does nothing, like this joint, the joint at the base of the thumb. Mm-hmm. Very common area for pain, especially with texting, etc. And so they even call it texting thumb now.
Yeah, you're bringing up a very interesting point because we hold, I want to show some things, and this is, I love this being virtual now. Texting the phones and using phones now, we're constantly like this. It's now changing the whole scope and anatomy of our hands. I have fingers now where I'm holding a phone on it. That's this pinky right here, and you can see the swelling of it. I've got where I hold the base of my phone, and I'm going to grab my phone and show you. I hold my phone up here like this with the pinky. It's so much weight. Then I've got this pop socket that they call, great pop socket. I hold my hand here, and now all of a sudden I have pain in this finger, my index finger. So it's changing everything because we're holding phones. I'm also hearing about people decrepit with their hands now. It's like we're changing our whole anatomy. It's like being a bird now and having claws. So with this happening, you sit here and go, I got to use my phone less, but then you can't use your phone less because it's becoming more and more of an everyday life. Stem cells will help you combat that?
Absolutely. Very successful with hands. So I can just tell you across the board, and I've published multiple clinical studies in peer-reviewed journals, that I am now getting approximately 85 to 90% response across the board.
Wow.
Which does mean 10 to 15% of the patients just don't get better. And I hate to say that, but every procedure has a failure rate.
Right.
But
that's good rates. That's really good rates.
Yeah, those are good odds. How much? 90% chance you're going to win. How many chips would you put on the table?
Absolutely.
Right. I'll go all in.
Now,
so the issue is.
No, I was going to say we're winding down and nearing the top of the hour. I didn't want to break you apart with that, but I also want to make sure our listeners understand how they can get in touch with you, how they can reach out to you, how they can speak about, getting an appointment, because living with something like this is very challenging. I never thought that I'd be dealing with it today, but to be able to know that there's hope and see it, I'm excited. The reason I'm asking this question mainly is so I know how to move forward with it and get with you and try the stem cell, because I don't want to live this way. This is the most miserable. Everybody says they want to live to 100, but if quality of life isn't there, I don't know that I want to live 5 more years. Living a long time dictates on how quality and how well your life is. How long?
I think I told you from another show that interviewed me, I had people contacting me wanting to commit suicide because they don't want to have pain, or addicted to OxyContin and other things. So let's wrap this up in a nutshell. So my website is drrichiestriano.com, Dr, lowercase dr for doctor, richiestriano.com. That's how people can get in touch with me. There's a contact form. I do consultations at no charge on the phone or by Zoom, and I'm not a salesman. So at the end of every consult, I'm not trying to talk someone into treatment or sell them a package of goods. I give them a full education, and then with their information, they can make an informed decision regarding the path forward.
You do the consultation, you decide you want to move forward. Do you do it inside an office? Do they come see you? How does that move forward?
Oh, so I'm a clinic within a clinic in Stuart, Florida. And thanks to Governor DeSantis, I can stack these technologies together with our medical team because he passed the law. He signed the law about stem cells in July. And I was in the clinic, managing the clinic in San Diego. As soon as he signed that law, I hopped the first jet out.
Wow. That's amazing to hear that. One of the doctors I work with was the Chargers orthopedic surgeon, Dr. David Chow. And David was amazing. I remember him operating on my knee, and he said, you're embarrassing me, man. You got to get up. And I said, man, this is a serious knee injury. He said, no, it's not. He said, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, he goes, even 5 years ago it was. He said, I did the same operation on Phillip Rivers, and Phillip Rivers was playing a week later. It's hard to see where we've gone with technology. Career-ending injuries are not so career-ending anymore. Stem cells bring in a whole new world to us. Doc, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for sharing this information. And I want to remind our listeners, you don't have to live in pain. Growing old can be an amazing thing. I love growing old. The alternative of it, I really don't like, not growing old. I don't like the alternative of it. I want to grow, but I want to grow old and be able to move and function. And when you go bend over to tie your shoes, you go over to grab something, you go over to grab your child and pick it up, or your grandchild or your great-grandchild, and you can't do it. Those moments really hit you hard.
Well, that's why, we want less pain, strength, stability, endurance, quality of life.
The fact
you
having
got
a
to
doctor.
check those 5 boxes, because if you can't play with your kids, pick up your grandchildren, which is the greatest gift in life, I have that, then, you're stuck.
So true. My dad had me at 57. I'm 55. I can't imagine having a child in 2 years. But all I know is that no matter what age you are, you want to be able to play and move and do that. And I see so many professional athletes in my career being a sports agent. They went from being some of the fastest and some of the strongest and some of the greatest athletes in the world to where they're wheelchair bound. They're barely moving. They can walk. I see them come to this beautiful course, Augusta National. They walk out on it, take 10 steps out, turn around and say, I'm leaving. I'm hurting. I'm in too much pain. You don't have to live that way. You got to go.
No.
You got to do something with it.
I've treated a lot of professional athletes, NFL, hockey, surfers, Triple Crown winner. The list goes on and on and on. And I hate to say regular people, but non-pro athletes, the weekend warrior, people in their 80s who can't play pickleball. That's their only mission in life because that's their life. So if they can't play pickleball every day with their group, life's over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that's why I say movement is life. If you can't move, you can't live.
Doc, I want to thank you for joining us. And again, remind the listeners you do have an alternative to arthritis, knee pain, back pain, not being able to function. Don't go out there and try to treat the symptoms, treat the core of the problem. The stem cell stuff is very, very moving forward, very technical. It's very good results, and it's very strong. It's not something wicked. It's not witchcraft. It's amazing breakthroughs. God gives us the ability to learn these things and move forward. I have a brother who is a renowned burn surgeon, raved about how the hyperbaric burn chamber regenerated skin and caused the burn victims who looked like they didn't have a life to be able to have a second life. Doc, I want to thank you for joining us and thank you for this work you're doing. Definitely want to have you on again, and I'd like to be a guinea pig to it. I'd like to do the procedure,
I want you
show.
to come and see me, and I want to show you what's wrong with your joints.
I'd love to do that, and I'd love to continue this show and show the journey that we do not have. We can live or we can die, and I want to live. I want to be able to live. I don't want to be here on this earth and feel like I'm dying. I want to be able to be
with your brain intact and functional.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doc, for joining us, and I want to remind everyone, Florida, the greatest place to live, work, shop, and play, and have all these amazing breakthrough procedures thanks to our great government, our great leaders, and great doctors like you. Thank you for joining us today, Doc.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
I will. You too.